30 years have since passed, and while a whole lot has changed, the song remains the same. The Wolf still rocks.
Hey there, it's Brian Ellis, Morning Show 101.5 The Wolf, and we continue to celebrate The Wolf's 30th birthday. We launched this radio station on February 14th, 1992, and this guy was a huge part of getting The Wolf on the air. Bob Harris, original program director with The Wolf, operations manager. Bob, great to see you.
Good to see you too, sir.
Can you believe it? 30 years since you had a hand in launching 101.5 The Wolf.
You know, it's funny when you reached out and said that we were going to do this, and I started thinking like 30 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, that's literally half my age right now.
Nuts.
And the memories, you know, just start flooding back of the process and how we actually put that together and put it on the air.
So let's go back to prior to The Wolf. So 101.5 FM in Peterborough was CFMP, an easy listening station.
Yeah.
How did we get from there to The Wolf?
Good question. Our head office, which at that point we were owned by a company out of Montreal called the Power Corporation, and they had a wing of it called Power Broadcasting. And unbeknownst to any of us, CFMP at that point was losing audience and was losing revenue. So they did a research study in the market looking for what the next best format might be and what the next largest audience might be for a radio station in Peterborough. And in November of 1991, I was brought into a meeting with Yvonne Chouinard. I'm sure you remember that name.
I do.
And a consultant by the name of Trevlin Holdridge. And they informed me at that point that they'd done this study, and they walked me through all of the information that was laid out and the three possible formats that came back as being the most highly requested by people who were in that survey. One was country, which was immediately thrown off the table because there was already a country station there.
Right.
The next one was a hot AC station, which, you know, we discussed a little bit, but felt that it probably wasn't going to be as successful as we thought. And the last one that was just as popular as the other two, and one that really jumped out for me, was a rock format. And, you know, if you remember back in 92, we didn't have a rock station. I mean, 980 Checks was a top 40 station, a hot AC station, and, you know, we were playing some form of it, but not really a rock station. So there wasn't really a long discussion in that meeting about going ahead with a rock station. Corporate wanted to see, you know, a marketing business plan, you know, as soon as they possibly could get it in order to, you know, sign off and give us the green light to make it work.
Sure.
So we walked away from that meeting, and I think that was like the 8th or 9th of November. And then a few days later, they announced me as the operations manager for the building and overseeing both radio stations. And in that memo, they made a pretty stark comment about the future of what CFMP was going to be. So the building at that point knew that something was up with CFMP, and we were going to do something different with it at that point.
Right. Amazing. So the idea of a rock station was ready to roll. A lot of people don't know where the name The Wolf came from, and walk us through that.
Yeah, that was you know, the process of naming that radio station was a little bit more complicated than I originally thought it was going to be. We had brought, you know, we had Mike Cooper on staff, ex of CFTR in Toronto, which was, you know, he was a godsend. So many ideas that we would bounce off of him through that whole build of that radio station. Is this a good idea? Is that an idea? Is this thing? And he was such an intricate part of the build and the rollout. Mm-hmm. So we had Coop, we had yourself, there was Jeff Brown, Teresa Kashuba, you know, who was our promotion manager at that time. We would do brainstorming sessions on names. And I remember there was a radio station in Toronto at that point. There was an AM radio station called The Hog. and it was doing really unique programming, really aggressive, kind of like in your face attitude. And I like that idea. Like I just like that from a radio perspective. And I thought, wow, that's really kind of cool. And then when it came around to let's find a name for what this radio station is going to be, and realizing it's going to be a rock station. And at that time, we had already landed on the fact that it was going to be a pretty aggressive rock station. It wasn't going to be like a middle of the road kind of thing. We were going to be, we were going to rock.
Yep.
And in these brainstorming sessions, and we must have held like 3 or 4 of them, and we threw everything at the table. And we were writing stuff on billboard, on whiteboards. We were thinking about things that were truly Peterborough, at the time, like Lift Logs, Quaker Oats, and Peterborough Pete's. And we were trying to figure out stuff that we could pull out of there. And then I started to remember, what about this hog idea? Just because of the nature of how aggressive it was and how much fun it was. And then we started looking at, things that might fit that kind of mold. And then we started going down the animal road, like, okay, what animals might work that are, symbiotic with Peterborough? And then, we had muskrat, we had rat, we had badger, we had fish, and all these, like, it was just a nonstop plethora of ideas.
Yeah.
Beaver came up as one, and we all were like, nope, that's going to be trouble. And I remember the last meeting, we were just like, I said, okay, guys, let's just forget it. We'll come back at it tomorrow. And I remember it was like about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and I left the radio station. I went home, ordered a pizza, and pizza came, and I got distracted by something else that wasn't on TV. And I went to the bathroom, and I was sitting there, and like out of nowhere, Wolf. It came to me just like somebody hit me on the head, and it was like Wolf. And I sat there, and I was like, oh my gosh. That's it. That's got to be it. And in the next 10 minutes, Brian, I'm not shitting you, in the next 10 minutes, I had a pad of paper, and I started writing down all of those imaging lines for like Little Red Riding Hood and Granny and the Wolf Rocks and all of those things. And I couldn't wait to get to the radio station the next day to get our group together and go, I got it. I think I got it. it.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody just like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's got to be it. That's got to be it.
Wow. I'm glad you had to go to the washroom. I am. I'm really glad.
Subsequently, I've done my best thinking in the bathroom.
So now you've got the idea for the rock station, you've got the name, and then we come to the Wolf Howl. Now, some may not realize the Wolf Howl that you hear on the Wolf today is the same howl that we started with 30 years ago. Interesting story about how you guys found this Wolf Howl.
Yeah, and I think that that fact that it's there's a lot of things that are the same as the Wolf, 30 years ago that are today. The logo is the same. Once we figured out that the name was going to be the Wolf, we had to figure out, who was going to design the logo, right? And we decided to go to a local artist. And I think that was Teresa Kashuba's idea.
Okay.
And we found an artist named Ron, and I cannot remember the last name, and I'm so sorry.
I know. I can't remember that either. I know it's Ron.
It's in a file somewhere in the office there somewhere. And I'll get back to the howl in a second, but we did a couple of renderings with Ron, and it was Cooper that Mike Cooper said, you know what, this needs to be a little bit more aggressive. Like, let's have him doing something, that's a little bit more in your face. And we gave that idea to Ron, and Ron came back with what is over your shoulder. Yep. That's right, the drawing.
Yep.
And it hasn't changed since it launched.
No,
and I'm very, very proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some tweaks to the actual letters and the numbers, but you're right, that actual wolf head, that's just classic. And why would you mess with that?
Well, I think the fact that is instantly recognizable, and then the Wolf Howl put together, and the Wolf Howl, we weren't even looking for the Wolf Howl, to be honest with you. It was Jeff Brown and I sitting in a production studio going through music. And once we decided it was going to be a rock station, Downtown Brown, as we love to call him. Jeff Brown would be like pacing outside my office. When are we going to do music? When are we going to do music? And we would find like 2 or 3 hours every day and just lock ourselves in the studio and just go through records. And we were going through a John Lennon album, Walls and Bridges, and we were just playing track by track. And that's how we did it. We went album by album, track by track. So an insane amount of music listening to build a playlist. And he hit this track called Scared. And at the beginning of Scared, there are 2 wolf howls.
Yep.
And I remember Jeff looking at me like, what's going on? Like, that I hit the wrong button or something. And I remember hearing the wolf howl and going, oh my gosh.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what we need. And like, I have goosebumps telling you that story, right?
It's
because
crazy.
That wolf howl became like the insignia for the radio station. It was the stamp, right?
Yep.
And subsequently, even the night of the launch party, people were howling. And everywhere you went, if you remember the radio station or, driving, remember that vehicle we had, the station vehicle? I think it was a Suzuki Sidekick.
The Little Paw.
Little Paw.
Little Paw.
And we kept getting the metal spare wheel cover on the back of it. It kept getting stolen.
Exactly.
We kept
it was
getting
the logo.
it redone, and somebody would steal it again.
Yep.
And that wolf howl became like such an important part of connecting with listeners, and like right away, because people were doing it everywhere, and it was a total fluke.
And to this day, they still do the wolf howl.
They still howl. Yeah.
So we have the wolf howl, we have the name, we have the idea of, now we know it's a rock station. Now we have to now you guys had to start to get the word out that something was coming. And the teaser campaign that you guys did with billboards and TV, talk to us about that.
Well, one of the I think one of the best ideas we had, and I think it was Teresa Kashuba and Cooper and myself just sitting down looking at marketing and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure it was Teresa that came up with the idea of like, let's just tell them it's coming. And there was no reason at that point not to. And if you think about how radio stations change format, they don't tell you it's coming. They just flip a switch and one day it's this, the next day it's that. And we had no reason not to tell people it was coming. So we had a TV station. So we decided to use the benefit of the TV station with teasers. And we just told people that a rock station was coming. And we told them that something was coming on February 14th. And I remember shooting the television teaser outside the studio with a cameraman running through the ground, like with the camera buried in the grass, like, tall grass about 2 feet high, and then coming up on what was the landscape. And then the wolf howl, right, as part of the teaser campaign. And then again, I think it was Teresa's idea, or Coop's, 30 years, memory's a little foggy, about, it might have been the sales idea. Actually, probably was the sales team to do an actual launch party. Yeah. Right.
And that to me is something that I'll never experience again. And there are a lot of radio folks that will never experience that sort of a night again. And it was February 14th. It was 1992, 6 p.m. We were at a bar called Casey's on Chemong Road in the North End.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere around the building was incredible.
Well, I remember pulling up in Little Paw, and I've told this story before when we've talked about it, and there was people lined up. And we launched the station at 6 o'clock. I think it was 6 o'clock, right?
It was 6 o'clock, yeah.
I should know that because I have the original marketing plan for the radio station. Right
no, that's great.
It's probably in here somewhere. And I remember pulling up like at 5 o'clock, and there were people lined up. And I'm like, why aren't they letting people in? Why aren't they letting people in? And I walked in, and I had like 2 or 3 boxes of Wolf mugs, right? And the place was packed. Like, yeah, standing room only. And I actually have, I don't know if you can see these, but I have pictures of staff.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Yeah, that's Jay Sharp,
that's
Norma Green.
and Jay Sharp.
Jay, yeah.
And this is I actually took this picture when, we were launching the radio station. So there's Coop.
Mike Cooper.
He's howling.
That's great. Love it.
Cooper.
Yep. A friend of
having
ours,
tequila.
Jerry Goss. Yep. Friend
Jerry
of ours.
Goss, our buddy Jerry Goss.
Yep.
And more Coop. Like Coop was the star.
Yeah,
right?
he definitely was. Totally. Yeah. It was such a fantastic night. We had spotlights up out front, and it was amazing. That was a great night. And I think that as great of a night that was, the reaction after the launch, it just kept building.
I don't think we knew. Like
No.
we were, I was 29 years old at that point. We were all youngsters, and most of us had, spent most of our career in and around Peterborough, right? So nobody had ever been involved with doing anything like that, right?
No.
We had the advice of the consultant, who was kind of, pointing us in the right direction. We had Coop, but I don't think any of us knew how popular that station was going to be. And like right out of the gate,
Off the top.
I was looking because I that station is very important to me, throughout my entire career in radio. And I have a file here, and these are letters, texts, or not text, because text wasn't around then. Letters, faxes. I have faxes in here, Brian.
Yeah.
And of congratulations of launch. And I also got, there's a bunch of letters in here from people who were anticipating the launch of the radio station, and they couldn't wait because they were listening to that radio station in Toronto, but they wanted something local, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Prime Minister was in town that night.
Oh.
I can't remember who the Prime Minister was, but I remember Teresa saying, "Oh my God, the Prime Minister is going to be in town. Let's try and get him." And for the launch party, but they declined. I'm not sure who that was.
We've touched so far with this interview Mike Cooper. Now, Mike Cooper was the very first morning show host on The Wolf. As you say, he came to us from Toronto. He was a pretty big deal, a very big deal in radio, and that was such a get for us to have Mike Cooper.
Yeah, Coop. Coop was the reason I got into radio, because I was such a big fan of the station at that point, CFTR, and the character of Mike Cooper, who was the same guy on the air as he is off the air, by the way. Mm-hmm. He called out of the blue, and at that time I was programming 980 checks, and he needed to get out of Toronto for a couple of years because his contract was over, and he was looking for a gig, and I almost shit my pants. I'm like, oh my God, Mike Cooper wants to work here. And I can remember running down the hall, like at full tilt, to Jack Ruddle. I don't know if you remember Jack Ruddle. He was running the TV and radio stations there at that time. And I told him, I said, this is how much money we need to find, and Mike Cooper wants to work here. And it was like 3 weeks later, Coop came aboard.
Amazing.
And when you bring somebody like a Mike Cooper into a radio station environment, everybody's level of performance just goes like this. Like, you just get better at what you do. And one of the great things about Coop is that he helped everybody. Like, it didn't matter who you were, right? If you were just starting out, or, myself as a young program director at that point, advice, tidbits, and not just during work hours, after work hours too. Like, he was an immeasurable amount of help for us.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, and you said how young we all were announcers. I mean, we were all very young announcers, and to have a guy like Mike Cooper, a seasoned radio veteran, come in, and as nice as he was, he would, give you tips or give you suggestions or listen to something you did on the air. And he was just a great guy. And I was so happy to be able to have Coop to work with. And, on the same token, I mean, I to this day appreciate that you gave me the opportunity to go from our AM station 980 checks. I was doing afternoons, and you gave me the opportunity to do afternoons on the Wolf because I'm still here now, and
Yeah.
it's it's something that I've loved for the past 30 years. So I just wanted to thank you for what you did for me in the very beginning.
You're more than welcome. I mean, that was one of the easiest decisions, when we started building that station was, the staffing.
Hmm.
We basically moved everybody from 980 checks over to the Wolf,
Yep.
and then subsequently people from CFMP over to what became the Cruise, right?
Yep.
And I just have to say that, Gord Gibb, who, is a legend in that city. Gord Gibb was an immeasurable amount of help too, because Gord had programmed radio stations in that market before. He knew the market. I would bounce ideas off of him in terms of this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do, and he again, brought so much to the table as we started to put those building block, together. And he's a production wizard. A lot of the, what we call imaging on the radio station, the stuff that you play in between the records, with the Wolf Howl and that.
Yep.
That's all Gord's work.
It's
That's all Gord.
amazing. He sent me the original imaging package, and I just sit
Yeah.
back, and it's like, considering, the technology that was available then, and to hear what he was able to pull off, it was incredible.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that original imaging. I mean, when it came to, who was going to be the voice of the Wolf, right? There was no question about it, and that was going to be John Badham.
Hmm.
We were fortunate enough to have Coop, but we also had John Badham, ex of Toronto as well, right? And
Yep.
John Badham, God bless him, his voice was deeper than whale shit, right? And at that point, you wanted that big ballsy bottom end voice. And when it came to, who was going to say those call letters the first time on the radio station, and then subsequently all the imaging, right? It was going to be John.
Yep. I remember the first time I cracked the mic, 2 o'clock, there was John Badham's deep voice, and then me, 101.5 The Wolf. Hey, everybody.
Join the club.
Yeah.
When it came to deep voices, I missed that train, man. Do
Oh.
not have one of those. But yeah,
Bob
God
Harris.
rest his soul. He was awesome.
He was amazing. Yeah. What a ride it's been. 30 years. I am so privileged to say that I've been a part of the whole 30. These videos have been just amazing, reconnecting with everybody. And a pleasure chatting with you to sort of relive the early days of the Wolf and how we got to where we are now.
You're welcome. And I'd just like to say that, that, like I said, that radio station is such a large part of me, and I'm so proud of where it is today, and the fact that it is still the Wolf. It is still the original logo, and there are still staff members involved in that radio station that were 30 years ago, and that's just incredible in today's day and age. And I couldn't be happier. And whenever I drive through, I'm in the Niagara region now. And we see each other occasionally. It's not like we haven't seen each other in 30 years.
Yeah, no.
And I still see Gord, and every once in a while I see Coop. So it's not like we've fallen out of touch with each other, right? But it's my career took me from Peterborough to Calgary to Toronto to Montreal, and then subsequently back in the Niagara Hamilton region. And that radio station's success still is like top of the list for me, considering who was there, how we did it, the amount of success we had, and it's still rocking today. Like, that's crazy.
I know. It's pretty nuts. As I say, I feel very privileged to still be a part of this, and I've enjoyed the ride for the past 30 years. We launched the radio station February 14th, 1992, and Bob, you were the operations manager, the original program director, and one of the main forces to get this station off the ground. Thanks so much for chatting. A pleasure.
Thanks, Brian. Oh.